Hello everybody, this is Vic Moss from the Drone Service Providers Alliance. This is a quick video about the 2209 NPRM. I'll get into what that is here in just a second. I did make a longer one that's about an hour long, so I'm going to make this a little bit shorter, or a lot bit shorter actually, and then link below to the longer video if you really want to deep dive into what we're doing here. This is going to be kind of a high level video, and what you need to do really is look at this one, try to find some other ones. Pilot Institute has a video out. I'll link whatever I find below also, so you can gather as much information you can before you go ahead and submit your comments to the NPRM, the 2209 NPRM. Okay, so what is an NPRM? Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. Anytime Congress proposes a new rule, or most time Congress proposes a new rule, they put it out to public comment. So you have a chance to comment as an end user, as an affected party, whatever. You can go ahead and comment, and then they read those comments and put those into the final rule. At least that's how it's supposed to work. That's how it usually works, actually. And what is 2209? 2209 is a long time coming, I think is a nice way to put it. It actually started out life in the 2016 FAA Extension Safety and Security Act. That's where the 2209 come from. It was section 2209 of that act. At that time, what was supposed to happen was the FAA was supposed to put out a set of guidelines, a set of rules, to where different entities, different facilities can go ahead and apply for airspace restriction, or at the very least airspace notification type systems for drones. So what they need to do, or what they wanted to do, is go ahead and say, hey, you know, we have these areas that we probably shouldn't have drones flying around, or if we do have drones flying around, we need some kind of notification system that then notifies the operators of the facility that say, hey, this is an okay drone, we can do that. So it came out in 2016. They were given 180 days, did not happen. For various reasons, but it also then in 2018 they added railroads to it, they being Congress, and ordered the FAA to get this rule out by March of 2019. Again, that did not happen for a variety of reasons. National security agencies, federal security agencies tried to get their 2 cents in. It sort of fell off the kept being pushed down the list by things like remote ID rule and ops over people and things like that. Night ops, things like that. They kept getting pushed down. And then in 2024, they also added state prisons, which, you know, that's fine, we could do that. But they also said, hey, you know what, FAA, you know, you kind of got to get this done. And then in 2025, the Trump administration put out the executive order titled Restoring American Airspace Sovereignty. And that EO, that kind of pushed it over the finish line. And so the FAA did finally release it after bouncing back and forth across many federal desks over the last few years. It did come out in May of 2026. So it came out about 4 weeks ago at this point. We have until July 6th to comment. I wasn't too worried about not getting out a video right away, because this is important, absolutely, but it's not remote ID important. We're not going to get 53,000 comments or whatever it was on that. So what is it? The FAA is trying to solve a certain problem. One, they want to do security. They want to have the facility operators have the ability to address airspace. We all know there are different facilities that really shouldn't have drones flying over it. They also mentioned near in the NPRM, and I'll link it below again, and you can read that if you want. You can concentrate on the last few pages. In or around is fine. Around bothers me just a little bit because we need to define around. But there has to be some national security, there has to be some homeland security issues, and possibly even safety of people and property inside the facility itself. And we really kind of need the protection of the sensitive security system, or sensitive security facilities. So that's important. But drones also need access to that for legitimate reasons. You know, we don't want everybody out there flying willy-nilly over prisons and over different facilities that would qualify for this application process. So we need to make sure, and the FAA definitely is pushing the fact that, yes, we do need this, but we cannot have this fragmented airspace restriction type thing. So there needs to be a good workable compromise for both parties when it comes to having the ability to get access to that airspace. Right now it's restricted to commercial operations, 91, 107, 108, 135, 137. So recreational folks really need to comment as well. Some of the sites, no, recreational people will not be flying over. Commercial people will not be flying over unless they have a very, very, very good reason. but depending on what those sites are, if they're too fragmented, it may actually cause issues for recreational folks as well. So recreational people, you need to comment too. And again, that'll be down below, so we can get that done pretty easily. What the NPRM will do is set up a new rule in the codified federal rules, so 14 CFR Part 74, and its title is Designation of Unmanned Aircraft Flight Restrictions. So Part 74 is going to become part of our vernacular. It's probably going to be in the at the very least in the in our recurrency test, and obviously it's also going to be in all likelihood in the original 107. Might make it into 44809. It depends on how that goes, but since it's a CFR, it may not. But 4409 folks definitely need to know about it, so the recreational crew definitely need to do that. What Part 74 will do is it's going to set up the application process. So it's going to have you're going to designate the designees, I should say, will have the ability to go ahead and apply, and this will set forth the process. So read what the processes are. Again, I'll link below, and find out if they're workable in how they designate. So we need to make sure that it definitely is critical infrastructure to begin with. And a lot of people who run some facilities say they are critical infrastructure, and they're not really when it comes to airspace. The FAA says, hey, you need to show that you have an incursion issue when it comes to drones, and you have to provide the history of it. So odds are you're going to have some sort of detection system already in place before you do any of the application process. So that'll be kind of nice. The FAA doesn't want, like I said, this fragmented airspace for commercial operators and recreational operators. Again, you need to comment to make sure you're not closed out of some spaces, like railroad facilities. For instance, the railroad in the preamble, it says, hey, we want to do our entire track system. Well, you can't do the entire track system. You can't shut something like that down, because you're just going to cut so much stuff off, and recreational people are going to get in trouble inadvertently and things like that. So you need to make sure that happens, that kind of thing. Remote ID is going to be standard no matter what you do. So let's talk about the two systems that are the two different levels of security. And it's called a UAFR, Unmanned Aircraft Flight Restrictions. There's going to be level 1, which is the standard. That's probably, well, that's not probably, that is going to be the vast majority of these areas are going to be standard. So you're still going to be allowed to transit through, again, as a commercial operator and hopefully recreational operator. You're going to be required to have remote ID and advanced notification. Now, what that means is important. Does that mean we have to let them know a day in advance, an hour in advance? Can it be a Lance type system where it then notifies the operator somehow or another? So, they get a notification through email or whatever when somebody goes ahead and sets up their Lance application or their Lance approval process for incursion into that airspace. And if you violate one of these, it's probably going to be a civil issue with, maybe civil prosecution, civil fines, things like that. So that's the first one, standard UAFR, unmanned aircraft flight restrictions, sorry. The second one is special UAFR. This one's going to be much more restrictive. It's going to be reserved for things like DOD, some of the national security stuff. Like if you look at the UASF the facility map right now, you'll see all these little areas of red if you check the right thing, and that's likely what those are going to be. Hoover Dam, Mount Rushmore, where I was at a few weeks ago. Things like the Statue of Liberty, DOD property, federal prisons, things like that. Those will probably be special. I would imagine state prisons will also be added to the special category. And if you violate one of these UAFRs, and to get permission, you're going to have permission from the facilities operator and also from the FAA, whatever federal agency is involved in that particular facility as well. So it's going to be, like I said, much more restrictive to get into, and rightly so. But if you do violate that, you're looking at criminal prosecution, criminal penalties. Basically, you don't want to do that. So FAFO, fly around and find out. Don't be that guy, as Greg says. So who is the FAA considering to have this application possibilities? Again, it says critical infrastructure, so you have to be critical infrastructure. So there's a definition of critical infrastructure the FAA or the federal government does put out, and again, I'll link that down below. So dams are going to be a big one. Energy facilities, communication facilities, transportation systems, trains, mainly trains, but also other transport like that. I think that's one thing we need to really make sure we comment on. What dams, this way, 70 miles, is Dillon Dam, and that's a pretty big dam. It's for Denver Water. They have a lot of water there, but just a few miles that way. And Littleton is another dam that's just kind of a small dam, recreational dam. What dams qualify? Defense industrial base, 100%. That will very, very, very likely, I'd be amazed if it was not under special category. Nuclear facilities, water and wastewater systems and facilities. Those should be on standard because there will be times when we need to transit those and possibly even take pictures. Rail facilities, I mentioned. Rail buffs really need to comment on this. If you're a drone pilot and you like chase trains, big boy, whatever, you need to comment on that. State prisons, yeah, those should probably be under special. And then other facilities that will then identify as critical infrastructure that would create, if there was an issue at the facility, shall we say, that would create a pretty bad situation either nationally or locally or regionally. So the facilities, though, must demonstrate why protection is necessary. The FAA is very clear that they don't want everybody just applying just because they don't want drones over the facility. That's not what this is about. So what's the FAA asking us, the industry, to comment on? Eligibility standards of facilities. Are they too broad? Are they too narrow? Are the right facilities included? Are the wrong facilities included? Just as important there. How is the drone operation going to be affected? So can the operator move reasonably through the area? Are the proposed notification requirements, which they're proposed but they're not written yet, obviously, are they workable? I really, really think this is where we can make a big difference, and we need to make sure that there can't be a process by which it needs to go through a third party and then get sent to them and then get sent back and then we get the approval. That's not work. It's an unworkable situation. We have the Lance system now and it works really well. It goes down occasionally, but it does work really well. And if we can modify that to include some way to notify the operator of the facilities, like, hey, Vic's flying through here, this is his registration number, he's whitelisted or whatever, and this is his time he's going to be there. He may transit through, he may stop. There needs to be some variables in there that notify the facility that we're there, but also then not be so restrictive that we can't get in there when we need it. Are we going to be able to transit through, and what does transit mean? Transit literally is just like, you're flying across, you're not doing anything, which is fine if you're just doing something like delivery. You have some kind of BB loss inspection situation where you need to cross through one of these facility areas. But if you are, let's say, okay, for a long time I flew a wastewater treatment plant. I did this for about 2 years, and one of the things I needed to do is I was going to get one of the images that I needed every single month is I had to fly over a refinery. They were not happy about that the first time I did it, and they didn't have any right to stop me, but they were not happy. They said they were critical infrastructure and you couldn't fly over that. So obviously they were wrong, but that's a situation where, you need to stop, you need to take a picture, or if you're doing a video, you need to do a nice pan of the area you're shooting, but you're back over the facility. You need to be able to talk about that. You need to leave your flight records, or not your flight records, but say when you're doing the application process or the notification process under Lance or whatever it is, maybe you just put your flight path in, tell them how long you're going to be there and what you're doing. I mean, real basic stuff. Should we have remote ID? Well, we need it anyway. That is our current system when it comes to identifying what drones are in the air, which is also one reason why recreational may be an issue, because if you're recreational under 250 not registered, then you don't have to have remote ID. So that's one of the issues with the recreational stuff. If you're flying sub 250 recreationally, you probably shouldn't be flying over some of these facilities. And if you want to, register your drone, put remote ID on it. It's that easy if it doesn't have it already. How should compliance be verified? We're talking about, eligibility standards at this point. I think there needs to be some sort of historical record of incursions and what they do. If 2 or 3 drones have flown over my facility in the last 2 years, sorry, you don't really need it. That's not how it works. The FAA has asked for specific feedback on the infrastructure sectors and how eligibility should be determined. We kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, but it's worth going over again. You must demonstrate a clear and present need for this. You can't just say, I don't want them. So you need to make sure that when you comment, if you want to comment on this, you just say, hey, you know what, there needs to be a critical need. They can't close the airspace just simply because they want to. And the FAA really wants this to balance both security and access. So that's just probably the biggest question in the NPRM is like, how can facility operators who legitimately need to know who's flying over their facility have then ability to determine who that is, but at the same time not closing this airspace to legitimate reasons for commercial and then the remote ID recreational folks. That's going to be the biggest one. You got an idea? That's where you need to concentrate on it. So how do you submit comments? If you've done an NPRM before, you kind of know the process, but there's always each NPRM slightly different, right? So you need to kind of have a little bit of a clue about what you really want to do. But the best way to do it is you get the information from this video. Go to the long video of mine if you want to sit there and listen to me talk for an hour. You can skip through some of it because some of this is repetitive. But write down what you want to say. Write down what you want to comment on, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But do it in a Word program, or if you're on Mac, do it on Pages, something like that, and get it written up. Run it through something like ChatGPT or Gronk and get it to where the prompt should be, this is a comment for an NPRM. You could even say what NPRM if you want. And then after you get it back out, make sure you read it and rewrite it in your voice. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't just run it through Gronk, run it through ChatGPT and send it in, because it may not be telling you exactly what you want to do. But go ahead and submit what your comment is, what you've written. You can even just write down the high points of what you want to comment about and how you want to comment, and it'll write it for you. But again, make sure that it is in your voice. So strong comments are going to include specific operational examples of why this will affect you, how this will affect you, what is going to be the economic impact of what you're doing here. Public safety concerns, mention what you think about that and how you think about it. And this all needs to be professional and well done. It can't just be this slap happy, this sucks, don't do it kind of comment, because it will not get listened to. If you can do mapping in the area, if you can do 137 in the area, how that is affected. And data showing how proposed restrictions could operate your actual restrictions. Tell a story. Tell what's going to happen to you personally. Use some examples of what you have to fly over this particular facility, and you have in the past and you will in the future, and what happens if you don't want to do it. Some of the questions you want to address is, does the two-tiered system work? I actually like this two-tiered system very well if it's written correctly. That's key right there. It is the right balance of what security needs are happening and what access needs we have. So again, you've got the special UAFR where, you really ought to have show cause to be in there. And then the standard, which is like you just need a notification type system. The facility proposed eligibility needs to be talked about, and you can go through that. You can go through that, and I talk a lot more about that in the long video. Will restrictions create unintended impacts on the operators? That's key as well. Transit notification requirements, practical. Again, write what you want to say in that area, how you think it should work. I love the LANT system. So something along those lines, it's already in existence. There's nothing need to be created from that, from scratch on that. And then kind of summarize, if you want, how the FAA can then protect these sensitive facilities and yet still give access to the national airspace system for us, for drone owners, for the drone pilots, for the recreational flyers, things like that. We need access to these areas for the most part. And if we have to say why, that's fine, but it can't be a request permission type system for the standards. It just cannot be. It's going to create too much of an issue, not only for the drone owners and drone operators, but also for the facility folks. They're going to have somebody there to give permission, and then they're going to have to justify why they won't. So it's just better at the standard system. The standard UAFR, I think, is a great way for the vast majority of these systems. And it does balance our need to access the airspace and the need of the facility operators to know who's in the air. Why do your comments matter? Your comments matter because the folks who put this together, who wrote this, they have drone knowledge. Obviously, they have to have some background in it, or at least have access to the knowledge of what drones are, how they fly, what we do with them. But they're not going to have the boots on the ground, everyday examples of what this will do. This is what we do. We fly drones, whether commercially or recreationally. We know how this will affect us intimately. So we need to make sure we mention that. And we're hoping that the 2209 final version is a good workable situation. The NPRM itself is well written. Read through the preamble. It's long, but it's not super long. Highlight stuff, pull it up as a PDF and search different phrases so you can get some ideas about things like that. But it is one of the more well-written NPRMs I've seen come out. But it is also probably the most important security NPRM since Remote ID. So we need to get this out. We need to make sure we comment on it nicely. It doesn't have to be a big, huge, long anthem of comments. It doesn't need to be 47 pages long. It can be a couple paragraphs. It can be a couple pages. And then what happens is the FAA will read these and then they'll craft the final rule. It'll go bounce back and forth about a few different agencies and things like that. The community itself is positioned so well to really have a big impact on this. The FAA wants to hear from us. They want to hear from the drone communities that say, this is what we need to do. This is how it will work. This is how it will not work. Not just this won't work and blah, give them suggestions. Don't complain. Anybody can complain. The purpose of this NPRM really, it's not an airspace mitigation rule. It's an airspace management rule. This does not tie Safer Skies Act, for instance, together with Section 74. That should definitely remain separate. They should never be tied together because that should be two different methodologies of how to protect your airspace. The incursion aspect of it and the permission aspect of it. The notification aspect of it needs to be totally separate from the mitigation aspect of it. This does not give facilities the right to mitigate. This does not give them the right to remove from the air drones over their facilities. I am a proponent of the Safer Skies Act if it's done right as well. But the FAA wants us to comment. The industry comments are really going to help determine if the balance is written correctly. So it's incredibly important that they hear from us. It's incredibly important that they hear from facilities. And the facilities, I know darn well, are going to comment, and they're going to have much more restrictive access probably than we want. So we need to make sure that we have our facilities, our abilities to access that airspace as part of how the final rule is written. So hopefully this helps. Get your stuff written down, put it down in your word processing software, and then either copy and paste into it or attach to PDF. So let's talk about exactly how we're going to do that now. To submit your comments, you need to go to the Federal Register. Link below, and when you go to the link below, this is the page you're going to get. So it says here, Federal Register designation restricted operation of unmanned aircraft in close proximity to fixed site facilities. Long title, welcome to the federal government. And again, these are fixed sites. Okay, I sort of didn't mention that earlier, but these are only for fixed sites. That's an important distinction. Comment period ends July 6th, so we have about 30 days. Plenty of time to do what we need to do. Don't wait till July 6th. I would suggest you get it done by end of this month, which is June. And get it in and get it out. We've had 208 already. This is really cool. If you want to see some of the comments, you can go ahead and do that. View the comments, get an idea of what other people have said, and maybe that'll help craft some of your stuff as well. We'll have our comments in probably in the next week or so. So maybe by June 10th or so, I'll go ahead and have mine in, and we'll get this. So more than welcome to look at that as well. It'll be under DSPA. And then go ahead, get it written, as I mentioned, and you click this little button right here. Oh, by the way, here, if you click this PDF, it'll give you the PDF version. And you want to get, it's kind of long. It says in the Federal Register. And then right here, 24685, this is where it starts talking about it. Right here. So 24685 is the page you want to start on, and then you go from there. So that gives you the PDF. If you want to do that, you can print it out. Don't print it out, it's way too long, but you can go ahead and download it and stuff like that. So we'll go back over here again. This is the page. This is your main page, like I said. And this is what you do. So submit a public comment. That's the button you want to push, obviously. And here you are. As you can either copy and paste your comment into this box right here. If it's not too long, do that. But what I would suggest is that I like what I just had mentioned. Please read my attached comment. And that's what you do. That's it. That's all you got to do. Now, what are you doing here? You are leaving a public comment. Here's where you add a file. So you can click add a file, and then you navigate to get to that particular DOM, and it'll be whatever one you want to go ahead and do there. So once you do that, make sure you label it, when you save it as a PDF, label it as 2209 comment or 2209 NPRM comment, something like that, where you know where you can find it. Email, this is my email. Put your email in there, obviously. Click this little box right here, opt in to receive email confirmation of submission and tracking number. This helps you make sure, one, that you did submit it, and also it'll give you the tracking number and you can follow exactly how it's going along. What type of organization are you? Are you a company? Are you an organization? Obviously, I'm an organization, Drone Service Providers Alliance. Click that, and then you hit submit comment. You can also preview it if you want. If you're an individual, you just click individual. Put your first name and last name. Those are required. They are, so if you want to do it that way. The rest of this stuff isn't. You're more than welcome to do that or not. Another option is always anonymous. Let me get on my soapbox here just a minute. A real human being reads this. It is not run through some kind of chat GPT type thing where it sends out a summary. A real live human being person reads every single one of these comments. Not the same one, a group of people. And then it's categorized or summarized in some manner or something like that. If you're that person and you're reading a comment from Vic Moss, DSPA, from somebody of a specific name or a specific company, and they feel strong enough about what their comment is that they're actually going to leave a comment and put their name on it, that's going to hold a lot more power, a lot more water than somebody who just has an anonymous submission. Absolutely, if you want to submit anonymously, do it. But I want you to think about it for a little bit and say, look, what's going to hold more power to the reader, an anonymous one or somebody who is so passionate about this that they're more than willing to put their name to it. So if you want to do anonymous, but I really strongly suggest you don't do that, either as an individual or as an organization, and then fill in the rest of that stuff. Hit submit comment. Obviously, I'm not going to do that because there's no comment attached right now. And away you go. You're done. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me. It's not an hour long, so that's always a good thing here, at least the video. But if you do want to get into a lot more detail, I do really just hit the high level stuff here, but if you do want to go into detail here, go ahead and go to the one that's an hour long, skip through what you don't want to listen to. But it does do a lot more, it goes into a lot more detail about exactly what the process is, what some of the reasonings are, and exactly what the FAA wants from us. So give that a go as well. And as always, in situations where I'm online or on a show, or in this case, in a video, I always have to end this with saying, fly safe, have fun, in that order. And I'll steal Greg's line here and say, don't be that guy. And thank you very much for doing this. Make sure you get it in by July 7th, and July 6th. And sooner is better than later. Great. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.